Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use promo code DOP for a bonus. Details for that a little bit later in the show. UFC Vegas 32 is on our hands. Paul Shaughnessy here with Cody Saftik on the line, breaking down another round of fights. Sounds like you've got some greasers in the wheel based off of a submission underground card, and you got a few little legs here to really cash in big.
Yeah, well, the main thing is this could turn out to be another greasy card, but that's what we thought last week, and it came together pretty nicely. I mean, 2 fights off from the PRP, and in those 2 fights, yeah, could have done a slight bit better, but we're definitely getting back on track. I really want to start this DK partnership with a banger, hence, God damn it, why does it always come back to Stephen Thompson versus Gilbert Burns? That, maybe didn't get it off to the best footing that we want to, but certainly righted the ship last week. And this week, I think it's chock full of these nice little spots. Again, we don't have to overexert ourselves. We don't have to force anything, but I think we can put a couple nice parlay tickets together. So happy to be here. As always, Paul Shaughnessy.
I've been on a pretty good run the last 2 months or so. I think the beginning of 2021 was a little bit of a dumpster fire, but that's the ebbs and flows of the game, man. You gotta keep the chips in play and just keep grinding away. It's nobody ever said it's gonna be easy. Remember, smash the like button, do all that good stuff. Help spread the show so we can continue to bring you guys free content every single week. So main event here, we got Cory Sandhagen taking on TJ Dillashaw. Cory Sandhagen minus 190 favorite. TJ Dillashaw can be have plus 160. Former teammates in this matchup. Dillashaw coming off of a 2.5-year USADA ban. Take it away, Cody Saftik.
Yeah, I think the name of the game is durability and then the potential long layoff of TJ Dillashaw. I am not one to discredit TJ. I mean, I think his body of work is tremendous. His skill set is tremendous. Everything this guy does, he does right. I mean, he's got very flashy, explosive striking. He moves well. He almost moves like I don't want to compare him to Dominic Cruz, but the movement is just super unorthodox. Everything's pretty defensively sound, but he comes from that Dwayne Ludwig system. So offensively, I mean, he's a sniper as well. I mean, as far as his striking skill set goes, he's amongst the division's elite. Oh, wait, he's got a collegiate wrestling background in his back pocket, spent years at Team Alpha Male grinding with some of the best guys in the sport. Cardio off the chain, probably because of the EPO, but all the same, the guy can fight. Yeah, how could it not help, right?
That's what it's there for.
Specifically, very specifically. You get a 10-year ban. If you have a racehorse, standardbred racing, and it gets caught with EPO in its system, you get a 10-year ban. That's how serious of an offense it is. In his case, he's coming off a 2.5-year long layoff. And again, does it affect him? Maybe, but we talk about this week in and week out. There's almost always somebody on every card every week who's coming off some near 3-year long ban. Last week it was Miesha Tate with like a near 5-year long ban or whatever it was. And it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't skip a step. So I do expect him to come in excellent form. And for that reason, a 2-to-1 price tag on Cory Sandhagen is a little bit iffy. But again, if he's got the cardio, he's got the striking, he's got the wrestling, like what does this cat not do well? And that's why I mentioned it comes down to durability. I just don't think he's the most durable guy going. Back in the day, we would always point out to the example of him fighting John Dodson, a natural flyweight who does have a big thumping right hand, and TJ Dillashaw had been knocked out in that fight. But when the first Cody Garbrandt fight came around, the narrative that Garbrandt was trying to turn was, I've dropped this guy in the gym. I've knocked this guy in the gym. Watch, I'm going to do it. And he doesn't do it. He loses not only the first, but the first 2 TJ Dillashaw fights, all of them for that matter. But he does drop him pretty solid in that first fight. And so when you see Henry come out, again, a natural flyweight, walk right through him in 32 seconds, it's not that his durability is bad. It's that when you're fighting the best guys in the world, if there was one little knock on TJ Dillashaw, if there's one thing that we can discredit about him, because he's a pretty complete fighter.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that we can point out, it would be maybe the durability. When you look at Cory Sandhagen, he hasn't fought the same body of work. He hasn't fought the same level of talent. But shit, man, Frankie Edgar, Marlon Moraes, Aljamain Sterling, Rafael Assunção, John Lineker, never been knocked down. He's never been knocked out in his career. The only time he's ever been finished was the submission for Aljamain. But I mean, he's a pretty cast iron guy. In fact, he got hit 106 significant times against John Lineker and did not go down. And some of those shots are just bombs. And you, better than anybody, know why they call him Hands of Stone, because John is an absolute monster in there. And I really think that Cory Sandhagen is one of these guys also training at elevation, has a great gas tank, has great cardio. He should be able to push the pace. Now, the other narrative out there is that these guys are actually former training partners. They were both under that Dwayne Bang Ludwig system, and Bang had left Colorado briefly, taken TJ. They went to California. They did spent some time in there. And Marlon Vera and Cory Sandhagen were pretty much the two guys specifically that were getting a lot of work in with him. When they went back to Colorado, they potentially worked a bit together, but then they went their separate ways. Now they're getting this fight book. I almost feel like if you're Cory Sandhagen, you saw TJ on EPO, you saw TJ at the best of his abilities, you saw him as a world champion firing off on cylinders. You were just the minion who's in getting work. And the guy that you're going to face on Saturday night, surely he's not better than that man. Whereas if you're TJ, you were facing Cory Sandhagen, he was 26 years old. He was pretty green. He had a win over Mario Batista in pretty spectacular fashion, but he was still getting his feet wet in the organization. So who's going to come out here in better form? I would think Sandhagen. I would think this thing's scheduled for 5. It's probably going to 3, 4, or 5, if not the distance. But I would think at some point the volume from Sandhagen starts to wear down TJ, whereas Sandhagen's able to take TJ's best shots and keep coming with it. So listen, this is probably a lot closer than the 2-to-1 price tag suggests. However, that is the guy I am picking, would be Cory Sandhagen.
Yeah, that sounds all pretty fair. Curtis Blades actually came out on social media, and maybe it's because maybe he just doesn't like TJ Dillashaw. Or maybe he's just, or he's just really good buddies with Sandhagen. Fighters, like, they're obviously going to keep their allegiances. But he did say that when they were in the gym in Denver, that Sandhagen would get the best of him on the feet quite a bit. I mean, this is a kind of a fight where it's just like you really have to kind of see the weigh-ins, like TJ, this big layoff. I saw him in the octagon. He was doing a little bit of like preparation. He looks good. He doesn't look like dieseled up like he was during his title run. I feel like the price is close to correct here. My only concern with Sandhagen is it was only 2 fights ago where we saw Aljamain go out there, secure a takedown, and fish for a submission, find that submission super, super quick. Can TJ do the same thing? I don't think his grappling is on the same level as Aljamain Sterling. His wrestling maybe just as good, though. So that is a bit of a concern for laying a minus 200 price or minus 190 at DraftKings Sportsbook on Cory Sandhagen. And the last thing I want to really talk about is that you were talking about how you kind of thought the over. I mean, the over at plus 140, it seems over 3.5 rounds plus 140 seems all right, but we've seen Sandhagen just, I mean, if he lands a flying knee square on your chin, it's going to be tough for anybody to come back from. And Dillashaw, obviously, he was knocked out by Dodson way back when, but I mean, the Cejudo fight, I feel like that weight cut absolutely ruined him. So I kind of give him a little bit of a pass on, the last time that we've actually seen him out there in terms of the durability, because I think 125 was something he agreed to and then probably realized in the last week or so, he's just like, oh boy, this was a bad idea. Well, I'm with you. Yep.
Yeah, no, finish up.
I was just gonna say I'm picking Sandhagen here. I don't have any cash on it though. We'll investigate further at the weigh-ins. There's actually a few spots all over this card. It seems like a very, very important weigh-in week as far as I'm concerned. This one, we got Ladd and Chiasson. We'll talk about Williams versus Gall later on today. Eubanks versus Elise Reed. Like there's a lot of spots where the weigh-ins are always important, but they seem extra important for a bunch of fights this week.
Yeah, that's fair. The only thing I was going to add on was just as you mentioned that the fight with Henry Cejudo, TJ was able to make 125 pounds. Did it take a lot out of him? I'm sure it did. But the dude made 125 pounds on the nose. There's no world that exists where Cory Sandhagen can make 125 pounds. Not going to happen. And furthermore, the guy that was able to take him down and now grapple him, Aljamain Sterling, there's no world exists that Aljamain Sterling's make 125 pounds. Like, these guys are pretty big for the weight classes they're in. And just for the record, TJ has not submitted an opponent since Vaughn Lee in 2012. So like 9 years ago. Again, there was a layoff due to suspension in the mix. So all the same, even if he does get those takedowns early, which he could, I'm hoping that Sandhagen's able to just work him over in those later rounds. But I think we're on the same page. We both got Sandhagen. We both agree that the price is a little disrespectful towards the former champ.
All right, next up, we got Cody's baby, Aspen lad, coming back from injury, taking on Macy Chiasson. Aspen lad minus 195 favorite. Chiasson could be had for plus 165. I mean, the reconstructive knee surgery tore her ACL. I see her on the gram. You know, she's hiking. She's got dogs.
Always.
She seems to be,
Always.
you know, she's putting in that cardio training. And that's cardio is always checked out for her completely. But you know, it's always a bit of an iffy spot coming back. I think Chiasson has a bit of an advantage on the feet here, but as long as Aspen Ladd looks pretty good on the scale, she doesn't show up like she did against Germaine Durandamy, where frankly she probably shouldn't have fought the next day. Like she looked next to death that day. Now I have a little bit of concerns that, you know, cutting down a leg injury, so it's a little bit harder to get that cardio in and shave off those last few pounds. I kind of feel like that is a bit of a thing that's keeping me off of Aspen Ladd as a minus 195 favorite at this point. Obviously watching the weigh-ins, but going back, watching Chiasson versus Lena Landsberg, watching her versus Renault. Renault's able to secure some takedowns on her. Landsberg's able to push her up against the cage and secure takedowns. Like, I feel like Aspen Ladd should be able to, as long as she doesn't, you know, get completely flatlined in the first round. And I don't rate Macy Chiasson striking on the same level as a world-class athlete like Germaine Durandamy. As long as she can withstand maybe a little bit of an early flurry, like I think the takedowns are going to be there for her. And this girl has mean ground and pound when she gets it to the mat. She's ferocious, and the noises that she makes are kind of terrifying. So Aspen Ladd's the pick. Just a little bit iffy, just based on the ACL tear.
You know what? I couldn't agree more. Everybody knows that she's my baby. I always pick Aspen Ladd. That's my girl. But I will be the first one to admit she's a little bit of a letdown in spots. She's winning. Sure, the Germaine Durandamy, not great. But there's always moments that you can point to that you're just like, oh, geez, you know, that's something she needs to work on. And she hasn't been super active. She's had a big knee injury. And the weight cuts, my God, these weight cuts, Paul. When I first started following Aspen Ladd way back in the day, she was fighting at like, I think it was 115 pounds. And she's just progressively moved up the rankings since, right? So she fought Invicta. Sorry, she's 125. Struggles to make the weight. Amanda Cooper, 125.7. Katie Velasco, she's up at 135. She's moved up consistently her whole time. She misses weight against Jessica Hoy coming in at 138. That fight with Eubanks, she's dead on the scales. The fight with Landberg, she just barely makes weight. The fight with Evinger, like it's all just, she always struggles to make weight. Now you can go back and you see her face drawn down, teeth chattering, and then she goes out there and fights Germaine Durandamy and gets knocked out. And you can associate it with just another bad weight cut. She barely makes the weight. She comes in, and it's hard to push that type of pace. She's a pace fighter. Her striking is not super clean, right? Her wrestling's not super clean. The ground and pound ferocious, but all it is just she just wears such a hell of a pace on these girls that she eventually breaks you. You know, she broke Yanez late. She was able to break Sijara Eubanks late. She's able to break Tanya Evinger relatively early, but she just puts a pace on you that you can't match. But with a knee injury and a bag weight cut, if she's not able to push that pace, we've got a problem. Now, the other thing is that Germaine Durandamy fight. It's over in 16 seconds. That's fair. But it showed a lot of bad ring IQ in those 16 seconds in that she ran head first straight into the pocket with Germaine Durandamy and just got gunned. Like, didn't really set up anything, wasn't looking for the takedown immediately, which is what you'd think you'd have to do against Germaine Durandamy. At least grind her into the cage for the first few minutes and try to tie her out. It's all a little bit worrisome. And now we have the knee injury. However, as far as that she matches up with Macy Chiasson, it's just like you said. She's too big. She's too strong. She puts too much of a pace on. She'll be able to not outstrike Macy Chiasson necessarily in terms of the flashier strikes or those big strikes, but it's going to be 2-3 to 1. Macy Chiasson probably is a slightly better striker, but Aspen Ladd's going to pressure. She's just going to out-volume her. Again, you hear that noise. Sounds like a women's tennis match, but the judges are paying attention. And then once she's eventually able to get you to the ground, once she's able to get into the clinch, she presses you up against the cage, she muscles you to the ground, and then it's just in her domain. She's fought in similar opponents to Macy Chiasson, namely probably Lena Landsberg, and it's the same thing. Do the same thing. The Yanez fight, do the same thing. And so on one hand, we know what Aspen Ladd's capabilities are, what she can do on any given night. And we know with Macy Chiasson, that's how she struggles. Even in the fights that Chiasson's winning, right? Again, you've already brought this up, but the fight with Marion Renault, she gave up 2 takedowns. She gives up takedowns in these fights. I think if she gives up any takedowns against Aspen Ladd, it's gonna secure the round for Ladd, and Ladd should be able to just rinse and repeat, keep doing this. So I would lean towards Ladd by decision if I'm trying to improve the price. But just because she's not Bebe, I'm not gonna force her up on the parlays this week. She will be a little bit lower. I do recognize that because of the layoff, because of the bad weight cuts, there's a little bit of inverted risk there for sure. And I don't want to get goo goo gaga and cost myself $1. So she's the pick, but not as confident as I'd like to be.
All right, we got Kyler Phillips taking on Raulian Paiva. Kyler Phillips, a minus 260 favorite. Paiva can be had for plus 210. Minus 260 is actually the best price on the market right now for Kyler Phillips. Went back and watched Phillips versus Yadong, and I mean, they call this guy the Matrix for a reason, right? This guy's skilled. Carlson Jiu-Jitsu, brown belt. Or Carlson Gracie, brown belt. And, I mean, his stand-up, maybe a little bit too much spinning shit. In round 3 against Yadong, he starts tiring out a little bit, gives up that round. But, he's clearly winning the first 2 rounds. He just lands some just beautiful strikes. The other thing that really impressed me about that fight is that he really seems to know where he is in the round. Song Yadong fight was a competitive fight. It was Song Yadong's no slouch whatsoever. But, in these exchanges, and he's still getting the better of the striking, but late in rounds 1 and round 2, jumps in there, secures a takedown, kind of leaves no doubt. He's it's very, very high fight IQ that I see from him. On the other side, we got Paiva, who coming up from 125, obviously came in at 129 when he was taking on Zalgas last time out. I think he's actually a pretty decent fighter. Good technical kickboxer. Seems to have submission skills. Almost had Kai Kara France in a World of Hurt at the end of round 2. Was saved by the bell. He's got some slick submissions and all of that. But I think Phillips is the real deal, a legitimate top 10 guy in this division. I think the move for Raulian Paiva, who's a pretty young guy, up to this division, if 125 is a little bit too hard for him to make, is going to be a good move, but not in this spot. A lot of the advantages that he had at 125, he pretty much always had the reach advantage on people, which he doesn't have in this spot. I think Kyler Phillips is just on a totally different level. Kyler Phillips gets the W here. Minus 260 at DraftKings seems to be the best price on the market. I think he's a pretty safe parlay piece. What about you?
Yeah, again, I completely agree. I think Raulian Paiva's biggest advantage was his size at the weight class. And we see this all the time. They're like weight bullies. It's guys they probably should be a weight class or even in some cases 2 weight classes up, but they're somehow able to drain themselves out, show up to the fight, be much larger than their opponents, and go out there and win the fight. And I think that's the exact same thing with Raulian Paiva. He's a monstrous 125-pound fighter. Now, when you look at his record, not even ultra impressive, just being so big in there, he's able to keep competitive with all these guys. You look at the Kai Kara France fight, he loses, right? To kind of a small flyweight in Kai Kara France, but everyone thought he won the fight, and his stock still went up and all good, right? Then the Bontarine fight, he suffers the cut, loses the fight. But you know what? He was coming on strong. His stock still goes up a little bit. He hasn't really shown you any greatness here, just, did better than probably some people assumed he'd do. A win over Mark De La Rosa does really nothing for nobody. De La Rosa had no success in the UFC, was not at that level. So a victory over there is almost assumed. And then that fight versus Zhalgas Zhumagulov, I thought he lost. I did not think he looked good. And for the record, Zhalgas is about 5'5" and certainly a 125-pound fighter. So he fights flyweights. And again, if you say, well, he should have won the Kai Kara France fight, but they screwed him. Well, he should have lost this fight and they screwed Zhalgas. He hasn't looked ultra impressive. And then, yeah, sure enough, he misses 3 pounds by I think he came in at 128 versus Zhalgas Zhumagulov. So now the UFC forces him up to 135 pounds. You just took away his natural advantage. And it would be the same thing with Davidson Figueiredo. I don't think Davidson Figueiredo would be a top 15 bantamweight. Bantamweight's the best division in the sport. Maybe he would be a top 15, but he wouldn't be a top 10 bantamweight because these guys are just too big. His natural advantage is that because he can somehow make 25, he can come in as just the largest guy in the division. So Paiva's going to be up Schitt's Creek against a lot of these guys moving forward. And then they didn't just give him any old 35er to get his feet wet in the division. They gave him a surgeon Kyler Phillips, who's coming a long way. I mean, we saw Kyler Phillips back on The Ultimate Fighter. That would have been 2018. And he looked like he was the tournament favorite then. They liked him then. He was undefeated. He was the man, and he loses to Brad Katona, kind of an upset. First fight after the Ultimate Fighter, he lost to Victor Henry by split decision. If you know Victor Henry, the absolute gangster. Since then, it's like now you're seeing him realize his potential. Now you're seeing coming into his own. And the Song Yadong fight's great for a couple reasons. One, he gets to go 3 hard rounds, test himself. Cameron Else, again, it's another expected win. It's presumed that you're going to beat this guy. So to go 3 hard rounds, show us that grit, show us that cardio. Even though he's fatigued a little bit, this is good. This is getting that in, getting that experience. The wrestling looked on point. The striking was flashy. He is very athletic, very good footwork, very fast fighter. And let's be real, Song Yadong had been fighting Cody Stamann and Marlon Vera and Eric Perez. But my God, it's like Alejandro Perez. Sorry, Eric Perez, not the much less talented one in Bellator. But Song Yadong is a legitimate prospect. In fact, Song Yadong lost that fight, and he's now fighting Casey Kinney coming up, an even bigger fight. Kyler Phillips is the victor in that fight, and he's taking a step backwards, taking on a flyweight in Raulian Paiva, who arguably robbed Zalgas his last time out. This is a step backwards for him for all intents and purposes. So I definitely think Kyler Phillips wins this fight, whether it's stand up or on the ground. The one thing, because you can never just completely discredit a guy, is that Paiva is a good pressure fighter. You know, he keeps coming at you. The guy is pretty durable, unless you got a cut stoppage on him. And if he keeps coming forward, it did not have a bad weight cut, is feeling himself, and is able to keep that kind of grinding frontward pressure for 2 of the 3 rounds, then he could make it a lot dicier than a 3-1 favorite would suggest. But all the same, I'm going to go with Kyler Phillips. That's the pick, and I'm hoping he comes through.
Darrick Minner takes on Darren, the Damage. Elkins, Minner, minus 150. Elkins, plus 125. Who you got?
I'm going to go with Darren Elkins. Take a dog pick here. Elkins has kind of had the unfortunate run of just fighting like a who's who of the sport. I mean, he shows losses to Nate Landwehr, my boy, but Ryan Hall, a specialist, Ricardo Lamas, a former title challenger, Alexander Volkanovski, the current champion, even the losses back in the day, Hakran Diaz, the Shudo champion, who was back before USADA came around, a legitimate threat. Jeremy Stevens, Chad Mendez. So we know that he's a gatekeeper in that if you're legit, then you're going to get through Darren Elkins and you're going to cross the gate. If you're a prospect, you're not the real deal. You're a little bit overhyped. If you're over the hill, you're an aged journeyman. He's going to capitalize on those guys. It's the guys that are looking to beat that gatekeeper and get through. Those are the guys that Darren Elkins loses to. Darrick Minner is also a gatekeeper, only he's a regional scene gatekeeper. Now, we can talk day and night about the improvements, he definitely made improvements. Since he's left and gone over to James Krause's Glory MMA and Fitness in Kansas, he does look like a different guy. This dude never settles for decision victories. This guy never settles for position on the ground. He just tries to go out there and blow you out of the water as quick as humanly possible. So we have seen a different version of him. That's all well and good. But that different version of himself came over Charles Rosa, a man notoriously with no takedown defense in which that game plan could work. And let's be honest here, Minner was completely cooked, gassed out, tired after the first round, but the takedowns kept coming. He had top position. He kept working. I'll give him that. But his style would work against a Charles Rosa. He caught TJ Laramie because, again, that's what happens when you guard the gate. This is a young kid. He hasn't really faced any adversity. I'll snag up his neck before the fight gets going. See what I can do. Submits him with that. You can look at an entire career of Minner showing up and lasting about a round and falling apart. He's not known for great cardio. He's known as a guy that goes out there and blows you out as quick as possible. The one win over Charles Rosa, the only time he's ever not done that, is not enough for me to now believe that he's a complete changed man. He's also not super young, so I just don't know that he's going to completely change his game, and his game's very erratic. I just honestly feel like Darren Elkins is going to be able to stay out of the submissions. His wrestling game is actually better than Minner's. He should be able to wrestle him. He's got 3-round cardio. He's a bigger body. He's going to be able to grind on him. He is, in fact, a larger man, and you will see that at weigh-ins. And if he can keep this fight standing, in spots, Minner will outstrike him. But over the course of 2 or 3 rounds, Elkins should be able to start grinding in on him. If this is Elkins' a slight favorite, I probably hit it as a pass. But this is Elkins' dog money, and that's the best time to get some Darren Elkins. So he's coming off a win, which would indicate he's not completely shot. That win, even though not pretty, was another blue-collar workman-type performance. That's what he does best, and Minner, to a degree, is very similar. So if that first-round submission doesn't happen, it should be Elkins' wheelhouse, and that's what I'm going to be banking on here.
Yeah, 7 takedowns against Eduardo Garagori. I basically agree with you, like top to bottom on that one. Minner's last fight was definitely the best performance of his career from a, maintaining his energy. But even on the ground, Charles Rosa was kind of complacent to hang out there, and like he was fishing for like an ankle lock. Like he was kind of complacent to stay on the mat there. Darren is going to try to get back up. And I'm not sure Minner's going to be able to like secure takedowns. The only person to submit Darren Elkins is Charles Do Bronx Oliveira, like years ago. I mean, that guy's pretty good. I'm not sure Minner's going to be able to put him away like he did against TJ Laramie or a bunch of other guys that he's done all along the way. That was my first bet of the card. I found a plus 152, but I see plus 125. It may have even moved to plus 130 on DraftKings Sportsbook right now. It's a clear dogger pass for me, so I'm with you. Give me some Darren the Damage Elkins. All right, we got Miranda Maverick taking on Macy Barber. Miranda Maverick is a minus 135 favorite. Barber can be had for plus 115. Interesting fight between two, up-and-coming fighters in the division. All right, so Barber's been I think this is a really, really important key factor of this fight is that, there was always questions about, Barber training in like Fort Collins with like her family around there, and is she getting the proper training, all of that. I saw that she's moved to Team Alpha Male. She's training with Cory McKenna, your baby, your other baby. You have lots of babies. Yeah. Getting ready.
They all have high foreheads, just like me, like 5 head. You'll notice all the girls that I always claim are like my baby, always like JJ Aldrich, Macy Barber,
my God,
Aspen Ladd. I know. I'm a high forehead guy myself. Maybe that's why we can relate.
Wow, interesting. I didn't actually know that, but now it's all coming together now.
The queen of the high forehead women's MMA is Karina Dan, Rodrigo's sister. Check her out.
I think this fight is another dogger pass type of situation. Barber's had an up and down career, obviously the Roxanne Modafferi fight. She gets taken down in round 1 and she's controlled, and it's not exactly a great look, but we have to remember this is a 22-year-old fighter at that point in time. Comes back against Grasso, not the greatest spot either, but the grappling isn't horrible. Her escapes aren't bad. She just kind of looks inexperienced when she's down there. What this fight really comes down to for me is I think with Macy, you got like a much more ferocious striker. The damaging shots and the pace that she throws at is just a tear up from what I see from Miranda Maverick. I mean, it's really, really obvious in the, Barber versus Robertson versus Robertson versus Maverick. Barber absolutely just gives her the business, like goes after her, mauls Jillian Robertson, gets her out of there. Probably her best performance in the octagon. Whereas Maverick, she's winning the striking exchanges on the feet. She does all right, but like a lot of that round 2, Jillian just basically controls her, is able to hold her and win the fight or win that round pretty convincingly that way. I think that kind of cooks Jillian Robertson, and then Maverick's able to really put on a clinic in round 3. So the cardio really checks out for her. But Barber's cardio has always been good. She even won round 3 against Alexa Grasso last time out, despite looking really tentative on the feet. Like she was fighting from such a long distance, and anytime she would enter the pocket, Grasso, who's an excellent boxer and coming into her own right, like into the prime of her career, was just picking her off. But she made some nice adjustments in round 3, and I kind of take that as, coming off of a serious leg injury, first time back. I thought I see some reasons for promise, and at the plus 115, I think it's a dogger pass situation. So I got a little bit in on Macy Barber here. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely see the logic 100%. She's young, she's making improvements, she's still got a high ceiling, she's training over at Team Alpha Male now. That's all well and good. But to me, this is a this is a legitimate, I don't know, they're both legitimate, don't get me wrong, they're both exceeding, but they're both young prospects, right? This is the narrative on Barber is always she's so young, she's improving, she's her potential, youngest champion. Oh my God, look at her. Whereas Miranda Maverick just doesn't quite get the same amount of attention. But Maycee Barber's 23, Miranda Maverick's 24. And if you look at body of work, even though Maycee Barber came out to a hot start to her run, I almost favor what Maverick's doing. First of all, Maverick is huge for 125 pounds. I mean, this girl is ripped up, muscular. Looks good as far as I'm concerned, but she like is a very, very strong physical girl at the weight class. So Maycee Barber comes in usually with that advantage of she's fairly big as well. I just think it's off the table. Maverick's starting to put it all together. The footwork's getting better. The striking's getting better. She leaves her chin a tad bit high up in the air, but you can see fight to fight, she's making these improvements. And again, she's super young. Whereas Barber had everything kind of not given to her, but she had success was given to her really early. And so when you get early success, you get overly confident in yourself. You get inflated, belief in your skill set. She's training at Rufus Sport in Milwaukee, which it's not going to go good if you're training out of there. And sure enough, it doesn't go good. She actually left Ryan the Lion Schultz out of Fort Collins, went over, loses to Roxanne Modafferi, and that's where it's like, bang. Bucky Barber. Who the fuck is Bucky Barber? Her father, overprotective father, with a huge stake in her and her career. And then you start to see the parallels between her and Sage Northcutt. Northcutt was also heavily influenced by his father, Mark Northcutt. Mark was, they get you training from a young age. They've put a lot of money and resources into you and your career that they believe that certain things should be handled certain ways. And what happens is that these people are ultra talented. Sage Northcutt, and I'll stand by this claim, is ultra talented. He was a freak of nature, young, explosive, had everything. The problem was that he wasn't at American Top Team for 6 years, fighting 3 times a year. It's like they would give him these winnable fights. He'd win them in a minute, maybe 2 rounds at the most, get in, get out, look pretty doing it. He pulled him out of TriStar because the sparring was too tough. They pulled him out of Alpha Male because the sparring was too tough. And ultimately he would do his camps at Gracie Baja in Kathy, Texas, isn't it? Chatty or Katy? Chatty Kathy? Katy, Texas. He would do it at Gracie Baja Katy, right? So why was he being pulled from these rooms? Well, then it goes back to just it's always the coach's fault. It's always the trainer's fault. And as a result, you don't have one coach that's been with you for your entire career. No, you have your father who's been with you your entire career. So she's like that, right? She starts at one gym, then her dad takes her to Ryan the Lion Schultz. And Schultz is the man, former IFL champ, fought in Sengoku in Japan, hard-nosed grinder. She does well there, but then she leaves there and she goes to Duke Rufus's. And now she's left Duke Rufus's and she's gone to Team Alpha Male. Like, what do you want? Maverick is centered, right? She's been at the same camp. She's the one that's making the improvements. And honestly, the way I see this one going is even if Barber is able to take her down, not going to matter. What you saw from Barber versus Alexa Grasso, that even against a Mexican boxer, she was unable to hold her down with those takedowns. Later in the 3rd round, she has better success, no doubt about it. But the first 2 rounds, she fights awful. What I liked about Maverick is Maverick does get taken down twice by Jillian Robertson. And both times, it's like no panic out of her. She just like looks at her corner, acknowledges it. And at one point looks at her corner to be like, she's just holding on for dear life, makes the adjustments, stands back up. And when she stands back up, she's the one coming aggressor, landing the combinations. If you want to look at it by the numbers, Maycee Barber on a good output night, she lands 40 against Grasso. She only landed 16 against Modafferi, but understandable. She blew her knee out. She was on her back the whole time. She lands 32 against Jillian Robertson. Again, it's a first round finish. 55 against JJ Aldrich. By the way, she loses the first round against JJ Aldrich. She got hurt in the first round against JJ Aldrich. Not the greatest of performances.
Yeah, but these numbers that you're talking about
they're
like
they're finishes.
Yeah, so like 32
and
strikes in 1 round. Like that.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so you're going, okay, I thought you were being like, oh, she doesn't have output. It's just like when she bites on her mouthpiece and goes after it, that the volume is there. I think what it really comes down to, from what I've seen between the two of them, I feel like the grappling is a wash between the two of them, and I'm just taking the person with a little bit more pop, and I like the striking, the stand-up game from Barber a little bit more, and I think that she just hits a little bit harder and throws a little bit more strikes. I could see it being very close, but obviously the line dictates it's close. I just don't see too many big advantages for Maverick to pay the price of minus 150 favorite.
That's fair. Fair enough. We're on the opposite page here, but yeah, we can't agree on all of them, and this is a close fight.
We can't.
Do a
all right.
shoey.
Do a shoey?
Shoey. A shoey bet on this one?
I've already got money on it. We'll
I got money on it too. But
Cowards. All right. Wow, the peer pressure.
I don't want to get peer pressure into a shoey bet. I'm trying to think of another bet that we could do, but I don't know.
It's honestly a fight. Because I was actually.
Are you confident? Are you confident in Barber? If you're telling me you're fucking sure Barber's gonna win, I'll take your bet. You were wrong, Paul. But if you're like pitter pattering, like,
all right,
yeah, we're in.
Shoey
okay,
bet.
all right.
Hand high five.
DraftKings Sportsbook is not only our favorite sportsbook, but also America's top-rated sportsbook. Speaking of America, America's top athletes are all over Tokyo competing for the gold, and DraftKings has a medal-worthy offer just for listeners of the Dogger Pass podcast. Listen to this great offer. Place any pre-event wager of $1 to be eligible to cash $100 in free credits if America wins any medal this year. That's 100-1 odds on an American athlete to stand on the podium and receive gold, silver, or bronze this week. 100-1 odds on an offer like this doesn't come around very often, so sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook now and get in on all of the action. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code DOP when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits if America wins a medal. That's code DOP to turn $1 into $100 in free credits for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, and Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
All right, we got Jordan Williams taking on Mickey Gall. Jordan Williams minus 170 favorite. Mickey Gall can be had for plus 150. This fight is at welterweight, which is interesting and of note because Jordan Williams is a type 1 diabetic. We've seen him come into his Dana White Contender Series fight at 181 pounds, then 182 pounds against Imavov, who we'll talk about later, in his fights, and it's because he hasn't been able to cut weight. A little birdie reached out to me in my DMs who has somewhat close contact to him and says that they've been working on this weight cut for quite a long time, so everything should be under control. But I think this is a fight that you definitely have to look at the weigh-ins before anything comes in. I mean, the guy wasn't able to cut down. He was very, very undersized at 185 pounds. I think 170 pounds could be a great weight class for him. He seems to have some serious power in his hands. And yeah, it was basically like a physicality thing that really, really bothered him. And his chin seems to check out from what I've seen. The gas tank hasn't been exactly perfect, but I mean, going back and watching Gall last time out against Mike Perry. And Mike Perry, I mean, that's like his only win in quite some time. It was a pretty dismal performance. I know that was a year ago. I imagine Gall's made some improvements. I see that he's working with Matt Brown somewhere in New Jersey, getting ready for this. Matt Brown came out, looked great in his fight. There's a few spots where, like, you know, Gall's stand-up looks like he's making progressions. He's making improvements. But then the later that fight goes, Gall's kind of getting dropped. He's flopping around. He's trying to lure Perry into the submission game. There's a lot of red flags there. So I feel like this is kind of like a favorite or pass type of situation. You know, even at 185 pounds, Williams is able to hurt Imavov on the feet. There's a clash of heads in the first round, but then about 1 minute and 30 seconds left in the first round. He clips him real good, and he's got Imavov, you know, on stanky legs a little bit. Imavov's able to take him down and, you know, clear the cobwebs that way. But there's definitely a power and a stand-up game advantage for Williams in this spot. But the guy hasn't been down to 170 because of a condition that he has. I think you got to be safe and make sure everything shakes out on the scales before you do anything about it. But Williams is the pick. What about you?
Yeah, I feel lied to, man. We would tune in to Dana White's Contender Series, and they would tell you the reason he's not fighting at 170 is because he can't cut the weight, man. The diabetic, can't cut the weight, has to fight at middleweight. And in fact, his last performance there, Gregory Rodriguez, he came in at 181 pounds for a middleweight fight. The next fight against Imavov, he weighed in at 182 pounds. So he was definitely putting himself at a disadvantage fighting these larger guys, but what could he do? There was nothing he could do about it. So yeah, it was actually nice to see that his team figured out a way to get him to 170 pounds, because you would just think with his body frame, he'd be much more suited to that. But I don't know how that's going to affect it. First time cutting down, 15 pounds is a lot of weight to cut. I just don't know that it's going to be an easy cut for him and that he's going to be good to go. And because you can't confidently get behind it, I wouldn't want a ton of exposure to this fight. But yeah, I think he would go with Williams, and that's just an assumption. We're assuming that the weight cut's going to go good. We're going to assume that he's better at this weight class, but I don't mind what I see from him. That loss against Ramazan Kurmagomedov on Contender Series, split decision. Arguably, you could argue that he won, but beyond that, he was a 3-1 underdog, plus 300 underdog. He was unexpected to do much, and yet he still ended up losing a split. Gave a good account of himself. He just keeps coming at you. He's got some durability. He's got some heart. Is his cardio great? No. But his durability and his heart seem to carry him through. The Gregory Rodriguez fight, they both land well, but you see that he's got some striking to throw it in with that. And then his debut against Nassourdine Imavov, again, you mentioned it. He kind of did hurt Imavov in the first. He showed like that striking is there. Do you end up getting the victory? No, but all good learning type experiences from him. With Mickey Gall, it's been like a sideshow attraction from day one. He should have never been in the UFC, but they had this, we signed CM Punk, and it's a CM Punk sweepstakes. We need a no-name guy that's going to come in and fight him. Mickey Gall, he was at that Dana White looking for a fight. Remember, Dana would go and he would travel to these different places. And Mickey Gall, young kid, just coming off an amateur career, basically, just won his pro debut. I want to fight CM Punk. And they say, you know what, kid, you got it. Because if some washed-up professional wrestler could beat anybody, potentially it's this guy. And he made a career out of it, but it was fighting just those guys. He beat Mike Jackson. And then he beats CM Punk. Then he beats Sage Northcutt. When they finally were like, you know what, fight a good guy, a legitimate guy. Randy Brown wasn't even established at the time, but Randy Brown was far too much for him. He looked awful in the Brown fight. You can make an argument that maybe he won the second round because he ended up on top, but he looked awful the entire way through. So they rebounded and won with George Sullivan. Well, George Sullivan was 3-4 in the octagon, since been released. He was 37 years old. Best days were certainly behind him. So can he beat that level of guy? Yes. Then his next fight, Diego Sanchez. You and I cash plus money tickets on Diego Sanchez under the sure pretense of Diego's still durable, right? I mean, dude doesn't get submitted by nobody. Mickey Gall seems like a one-dimensional grappler at this point. If you can't submit Diego Sanchez and Diego Sanchez has got good cardio, then Mickey Gall at some point will get tired, will get taken down, will fold over. Boom, wouldn't you know it? Diego Sanchez, of all people, beats him. But I will admit, his striking looked a lot better in the Diego Sanchez fight for like the first 3 or 4 minutes. Then he beats Saloum Touari, terrible fight. Then that last one against Mike Perry, the striking actually did look good again for about 5 minutes. So I can't discredit him. He's definitely working on his striking to be something that goes along with his grappling. The problem is that his striking is still not very good, and his grappling is just not all that good. His wrestling is not all that good. His cardio is just not all that good. He's been thrown in the lines in that all of his fights are in the UFC, and it's tough to win 3-4 fights in a row and get your confidence going, because what he'll do is he'll win one fight over guys that get cut shortly after. Saloum Touari, by the way, is 0-3 in the UFC, no longer employed with the company. He beats those guys, but then they don't let him beat 2 or 3 of those guys in a row. He just gets another fringe top 20 guy, and he can't beat those fringe top 20 guys. So coming into this spot against Jordan Williams, it's like, even though it should be a winnable fight for him, and I expect his striking to look good in the first round, I expect Mickey Gall to maybe even win the first round. If I'm just going based on what I've seen historically from both guys, is that Mickey Gall come out, look good for the first 3 to 5 minutes, win that first round. In the second and the third round, he should start to tire. Williams has got forward pressure. Williams keeps coming at you. And if it becomes a dogfight, both guys are tired, Williams has come through on the other side. He seems to have the heart. He seems to have the desire. Whereas when Mickey gets tired, his game falls off very rapidly. So he's been off for a full year. He's only 28, 29 years old. He's still young enough that another year off is going to be good for him. But Mickey Gall's another one of these gym jumping sons of bitches. I mean, he starts off his career with Miller Brothers in New Jersey, right? And then as soon as he signs with the UFC, bails from Miller Brothers. He spent time at TriStar. He spent time at American Top Team. He spent time in California. He spent time, and now, what'd you mention? He's back in New York.
I didn't even really know what
back
gym.
in New Jersey.
Yeah, I saw him and Matt Brown in Jersey. It was like, I want to say like a Gracie gym of some sort.
And I believe it.
I
believe
can't
it, dude.
picture it right now.
He's bounced from a bunch of gyms, and I just feel like he's another similar to Sage Northcutt. He's another one of these guys that had a bigger reputation than a skill set, and as a result, they didn't develop properly. As a result, they had an inflated ego, and that when reality hit, it's like they just couldn't catch up quick enough. This is by no means an easy fight against Williams, who's a fucking middleweight, right? A middleweight coming down. He's not a middleweight, but he's been fighting middleweights. I've been fighting them tooth and nail. Did I mention he's got a win over a guy whose last name's Kurmagomedov? And it was a split. So he lost, but it was a split. It was a close fight. Like, dude's in with it. I can't say the same thing for Mickey Gall. So even though this is closer to a dog or pass, I don't want Gall. I'm going to end up going Williams, and we're just assuming the weight cut's going to go good. So tune into Friday, watch the weigh-ins, give it your best assessment. But if him and his team put in the work, I think that Williams comes out and gets the victory.
Yeah, it says Gracie, New Jersey Academy. It's him and Matt Brown. There's a big Gracie Jiu-Jitsu sign behind them, and there's like an old guy to the right. I mean, I'm not too familiar. The only thing I know about him is that he was working with Matt Brown in the lead up to this fight. All right, we got Punas.
Wrestling and jiu-jitsu could be his key here, right? Maybe he's been working on striking, but like take Williams down. My thing is that Williams has been fighting bigger guys, so he should be better, acclimatized to that. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. Good one.
Yeah, really good one. We got Puna Soriano taking on Brendan Allen, -115 Soriano, -105 Allen. Who you got?
I find it very difficult to get a beat on Soriano. Clearly, he's extremely talented, and I don't know why I keep having this belief that maybe he's going to falter at some point, because he's not doing it. That fight on Contender Series, we fought Jamie Pickett. I thought he looked gassed out by the end of the fight. His cardio wasn't great. He's a guy that had previously knocked out everybody in the first round. We know he's got massive power, and not only does he have massive power, but he's got big power in both hands. So he's a very dangerous opponent. But Pickett had never been previously knocked out. He's a very durable guy. And as soon as he was forced to go a few rounds, there was a lot to be desired. Now, mind you, he's only 6-0 at the time, right? He's new. He's basically only started fighting professionally a few years prior. He's full-time out of Extreme Couture, and he's managed by Ali Abdelaziz. So I didn't think it was a contract-worthy performance, but sure enough, he's going to get a contract out of it, and he does. And then in the two fights since, I passed on him versus Pichota, just didn't really, again, I didn't have a great read on him, but especially in hindsight, he's got way too much power for Pichota, so he touches him and he melts him, right? Fair enough. Now you move him on to the next fight, and the problem with Dusko is he fights with his hands down and his chin up in the air, and so he drops Dusko twice, scores 2 knockdowns, and eventually does knock him out in that first round. It's another nice performance, but we didn't learn anything more from him. We know he's got crippling power, and apparently he can wrestle. Apparently he's a decent wrestler as well, but we don't see enough.
D3 All-American. And he was a judoka before he got into MMA as well.
Yeah, and so now
it seems to have all of the recipe, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Dude, you're 100% right. And that's why I'm like, why do I keep doubting this guy and his abilities? He's got massive power. He's undefeated, young, good-looking kid, can wrestle. Because people say, oh, wrestle D3. D3's high level, man. And wrestling's one of the few collegiate sports where the D3 champion could go and start on a D1 program the next year, no problem, right? It happens all of the time. Guys will win junior college national titles and then will go to start on a legitimate D1 squad. So, yeah, I mean, the guy can wrestle. He's got the judo. He's at Extreme Couture, which is a very hot gym in the hotbed for mixed martial arts with the best manager in the game. Sky is the limit for him. And sure enough, it appears like he's got a very high trajectory in that sense. But I keep going back to the what if somebody was to extend him 2 and 3 rounds? What if somebody was to get him deeper? And with Brandon Allen would be a threat if he could get him deeper, but he's got durability issues of himself. When he engages in these wildfire fights, he leaves himself way too open, and he's kind of got a suspect gas tank himself. Like, he just pushes such a tremendous pace in there that he eventually wears himself out. You see him, he takes a lot of risks, a lot of risky fights, and his wins are generally very quick finishes. Not quick finishes, but he looks really good for the first round, takes you out. And his losses are when guys are able to extend him. Again, this goes back to the Eric Anders fight and the Anthony Hernandez fight. They're both LFA 5-round title fights. He loses those fights because the longer they go, he kind of falls apart. The Kyle Daukaus fight looks great for the first 2 rounds, gasses out hard and loses to a debuting Daukaus in the third, still gets the decision, but didn't look good in the third. The Sean Strickland fight, gassed out after the first round, or after the first, takes too much damage in the second, gets knocked out. Again, even the Kevin Holland fight, he does win by rear naked choke, but if you go back to right before the finish, he's huffing huffing and puffing, but they're hectic pace fights. So whereas my only knock on Soriano is maybe he's got a suspect gas tank, Brandon Allen could very well have the same, if not worse, gas tank. So I think that more often than not, Allen comes in, his takedowns get stuffed. Soriano's his wrestling and his judo background is good enough to keep the fight standing. And then at some point, he's going to land one of those nuclear bombs. And I just don't think Brandon Allen's going to be able to take it. Last but not least, Allen's been at Sanford MMA his last 2 fights. And yeah, he's looked a lot better. But the first fight, his first camp at Sanford, is the fight with Sean Strickland. And instead of going out there and trying to wrestle Sean Strickland, which is what everyone believed if he was going to win, that would be his path, he decided to just use this newfound striking, stand in front of him, and it did not work out for him. He took a lot of damage. That last fight with Carl Robertson, he gets a heel hook in the first round, but one's got to wonder, does he still believe he can go? Does he believe he can go out there and strike with Soriano? Because if he does, even for 2 or 3 minutes, it'll be 2 or 3 minutes too long. Soriano probably clips him with something. So I'm going to take Soriano, but again, as much as it does sound like we're hyping him up pretty big and we're finally on the bandwagon, I'm not jumping on the bandwagon fully quite yet, because like I think in my mind there's still a small possibility it just goes right off the tracks. But he's probably going to go out there, handle Allen in the first round. That's a credible victory. It'll be in spectacular fashion, and people will say, "I told you so." You missed out on the boat again. So maybe this is the first time I'm going to give him his credit, but it's not a top ticket play. It's not a second ticket play, but he will be on the PR. He will be on the ticket at some point is what I'm getting at, right? At the end of the day.
My only question with Soriano is how much should I bet on him?
Yeah, well,
because
again,
that Pickett fight, there's a possibility that was a bit of an adrenaline dump. At the end of round 2, he definitely seems cooked. I mean, he's trying to knock this guy out, and Pickett, obviously, up until that point, had never been knocked out, as you were saying earlier. It all kind of just, but in round 3, he's able to kind of get back on track. He's able to find takedowns. He's able to secure top position. He's able to cruise it out. It was not nearly as electric, as impressive as the other 2 fights that he's had in the UFC, which are both first-round finishes, and he is throwing laser-guided, heat-seeking missiles at these guys' heads. And I thought it was kind of interesting. He's like a little bit smarter when he has like Pichota hurt. He knows like, okay, he'll go in there, he's swinging, trying to knock you out. But when that doesn't work, he knows to like back up a little bit. It seems like he's developing, he's maturing in that respect. And Pichota, who's got a pretty decent sub game, has him in a couple positions, but you could see that grappling kind of show its head in those spots. It's like he was able to like escape pretty quickly and then get back to the feet and get back at her again. Strickland, I mean, was kind of, there was a couple spots at least early in the fight where like Strickland actually had like top control against Brendan Allen. He was having the wrestling advantage against him, and as the fight wore on, Strickland, I mean, landed like 94 significant strikes.
Yeah,
obviously gets the second round finish. And then the other thing, the little interesting tidbit I saw here in the Allen, now maybe this is nothing, but Allen versus Roberson. Roberson is fighting like switch stance in that fight. Now, I kind of thought that Roberson was having his greatest successes fighting southpaw in that position, because any single time he switched to orthodox, Brendan Allen was just chewing up his lead leg in that spot. But Brendan Allen was seemingly a lot less, like he wasn't willing to throw like the inside, or like when he would go to southpaw, he wasn't willing to throw the leg kicks as well. Because obviously you're crossing the body. It's a little bit easier to get knocked down and out of position. But it seemed like Roberson, he's switching back and forth, at least early on in the fight. Obviously, it was a first-round finish by sub. But at least early on, the best work was happening from the southpaw stance. And obviously, Puna is a southpaw. I mean, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid now. I haven't been all in on this guy up until this fight, but I think it's time to start taking some notice. The durability when he has been hit by Pickett seems to check out. The only question, as you were saying, it's the cardio. So yeah, the question is how much. I mean, this line opened at like -210, and then it shot up to like -140 immediately. That's kind of how these things go. But I feel like the -150 to -180 is where I would probably line this fight. I don't think this is a pick'em. I think Puna's got some significant advantages here. as long as, the state wrestling, as long as that wrestling holds up and they're able to stay on the feet, I think it's going to be a bad night for Brendan Allen.
Yeah, so that's one thing you just mentioned that's real interesting. See, I'm looking at best fight odds right now, and it's an even money fight. In fact, it's a slight underdog for Punahele Soriano, right? And you're actually right about that. Puna opened up as a minus 220 favorite, and now he's on some books a slight underdog. You just mentioned that you see it as minus 150.
I would, if I was lining it, it would be like at least minus 150. I think he wins at least 60% of the time. Probably.
I agree. I'm
probably upwards of like 66. Like I'm saying, like I don't understand why it's turned into a pick'em, to be perfectly honest. Now, the interesting thing about this is maybe I hadn't made a bet on it yet because I wanted to talk to you, but the interesting thing is, Brendan Allen is like 3 inches taller. Puna's kind of like a Kelvin Gastelum with more power and definitely more ferocity, from what I see on tape. He's a little bit small for the weight class. Like, are we going to get to weigh-ins and I'm going to get an even better price? Like, the line's been moving in that direction. And then how many people are really watching the weigh-ins? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of questions about that. But, like, when people see Brendan Allen towering over this guy, is that line am I gonna be able to get a plus money play on Puna here?
I'll tell you what, my boy Chris Curtis is in the room at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas, with Soriano, and the room consists of, on the daily, Alexander Gustafsson's there, Hazmat Chimaev's there, Jake Shields is now full time as a coach, and drum roll please, Sean Strickland, right? Sean Strickland's full time at Extreme Couture, gets rounds with him on the daily. The man who actually beat the shit out of Brendan Allen to a pulp just 2 fights back. So those guys are all actually taller than him as well. And I would reckon that it's probably not going to bother him as much. And then last but not least, there is a height and reach advantage for Allen, but Allen doesn't fight like a long fighter, dude. No. He comes straight forward. Like he gives you his advantage right off the hop. Like he just closes the distance on his own accord. So no doubt Henry Hoof is probably teaching him these things, but it's hard to learn on the fly when it's like, oh yeah, what was that thing we learned on Wednesday night? Bam! Soriano just cracked you. Like, bad time to figure out new shit. The best way is don't deal with this guy, take him down. But yeah, Soriano had 5 first-round finishes, all in the first round, fought Pickett, looked suspect, and the only time he went after 1 round, and then the 2 subsequent fights are in the first round. So I think that's the only one thing we got as a question mark, but we also agree that this guy looks like he could be the real deal. This could be a coming out party, and we will both be betting him.
All right, we got Ian Heinisch taking on Nassourdine Imavov. Heinisch, minus 145. Imavov is a plus 125. Who you got?
I'm going to go with Ian Heinisch. I think this is some tragic shit if you're Ian Heinisch, right? This is his career, dude, as far as with the UFC and Contender Series. He fought Justin Sumter on the Contender Series, and Justin Sumter is a wrestler, right? And he did give up a takedown there. Then he makes his UFC debut against Cesar Ferreira, who by that stage was no longer willing to strike with people. So he's looking to take you down and grapple with you. You know how Cesar switched up his game plan. And he gives up 5 takedowns. His next fight takes Antonio Carlos Jr., who's a grappler. He's going to try to get a hold of you, and he's going to try to peel you to the ground. Sure enough, he gives up 4 takedowns. He won all 3 of those fights, by the way. Then he gets Darrick Brunson, who is a legitimate wrestler, stout guy, goes out there, will take you down, will hold you down. And sure enough, he gets taken down twice. Then they give him Omari Akhmedov, who is, Dagestan power wrestler, Sambo guy, going to try to get a hold of you and wrangle you to the ground. And sure enough, Omari does 2 times. Jared Mearshart could do it all. And, he stood a little bit too long. Heinisch flatlines him in 1:14. Great performance from him. The guy didn't wrestle great. And then they give him Kelvin Gastelum his next time out. Whereas Kelvin can be a striker. He chose to be a wrestler on that night, scoring 6 takedowns over Ian Heinisch. So on one hand, Ian Heinisch does not look particularly good in a lot of these spots in the UFC, but he's been fighting almost the exact same style. Guys that are not looking to engage him, they're looking to get a hold of him, peel him to the ground, and then grapple him. And yes, are they able to do it? Sure. But Antonio Carlos Jr., he fights at 205 now. You have Darrick Brunson, he's in the top 10. You have Kelvin Gastelum, he's a former world title challenger. Those guys are extremely legitimate. What he gets in Imavov here is a guy that really doesn't figure to take him down. And even if Imavov did shoot a takedown, he's not those guys. He's not Omari Akhmedov. He's not Darrick Brunson. He's not going to go out there and get those takedowns over Heinisch. So we should be able to see Heinisch for the first time be able to go out there and just not have to worry about being taken down. That should open up his own striking. And he's going to mix in his offensive takedowns as well. Listen, he's not just a guy that goes out there and gets out grappled. He's actually a fine wrestler, comes from a wrestling background. Take in consideration, he's been taken down 20 times, 19 times in the UFC, 1 time on the Contender Series. He's been taken down 19 times in the UFC and still shows a 60% takedown defense. Why? Because he stuffs a lot of these takedowns too. It's just he fights elite level guys. But on top of that, he did take down Kelvin Gastelum. That's impressive. He took down Amari Akhmedov 3 times. That's very impressive. He took down Antonio Carlos Jr. He took down Cesar Ferreira. He can wrestle. It's that, again, it goes back to the level of competition that you're fighting. Imavov has been my boy. Imavov's a guy that I have a lot of respect for. He beat Jonathan Meunier in his last fight, Aries FC, before he came over to the UFC. I hyped him up. He got a win over Jordan Williams. I hyped him up. He didn't look great against Williams, but he did land a ton of shots that put down the average human being, and so I gave him a pass. Williams is just really tough. No problem. Williams did stun him in the first round, hurt him in the first round, but I give him a pass. And then I backed him as an underdog, which I don't regret doing because Phil Haas did almost blow that fight. But fuck, he looked awful against Haas, man. Like, he literally, when Haas wanted to control him against the cage, it was just like nothing. He would just press him up against the cage. There was nothing there. Imavov gassed out. Imavov had very poor ring IQ. He just fought an absolutely abysmal game plan. Cardio looked bad. Everything looked bad, really. And sure enough, still almost wins the fight with Phil Haas, but gasses out, does too little too late, and loses the decision, rightfully so. Fair enough. Since then, he's not like these other, when you look at these Russian guys from Dagestan, it's like you stay in Dagestan, you stay in Russia, you are going to be an absolute threat. But if you leave Russia and you go to one of these mega gyms, like an American Kickboxing Academy, like an American Top Team up, you might even be able to hit other levels. You know, Chimaev, he went to Sweden initially, all-star, great gym, best gym in Europe. And, you know, even he realized, I got to go to Extreme Couture and just get the better bodies. Imavov's problem is that he's in France working with Alan Baudot and not taking himself out of his comfort zone, and he's not making the same improvements. And so whereas he could have been something special because he's a guy that knows how to wrestle a little bit and has good striking, they call him the sniper. He's a long rangey guy. He's kind of big for the weight class. Whereas he does some of those X factor variables, I can't trust that he's made any improvements. And what we saw against Phil Haas was abysmal. So Heinisch has been fighting ranked guys on the routine, and even though it's been bad style clashes that lead to him looking pedestrian. In this fight, the style clash actually favors him. He can strike with Imavov in spots. He can have a lot of success striking with Imavov in spots, but him mixing in his own wrestling, due to that guy, what everybody else has been doing to you, that's the key. And at 155, it's not really that bad of a price tag. I got a strong feeling this thing's going the over and going the distance, and I would go Heinisch by decision.
I actually I think the overs in this are a little bit juiced, and here's why. A little bit over juiced, and here's why. And I actually have a small little 20-1 feeler on this one, which probably won't win, but I feel like it's a better than 5% chance that it happens. I mean, Imavov maybe against Williams. Obviously, there's the clash of heads early in the round, and that stumbles him a little bit. But at 130. Williams is able to land, and that gets him on stanky legs again. Now, maybe that they're both related. He still hadn't completely recovered from that clash of heads, but that's like a little bit of a red flag for me that I think that over or like by decision props aren't necessarily safe here. Obviously, we're in a small cage again between these two. Heinisch training at Stanford MMA for this fight. I see him out there with Rafael Fiziev and Gilbert Burns putting in some time with Greg Jones on his wrestling. Heinisch versus Gastelum, not a very good performance whatsoever. A lot of low IQ plays. Tries to throw this like flying knee a couple times. Ends up on his back. Kelvin's able to control a bunch of situations that way. He initiates grappling. Ends up getting caught in body locks. Taken down again. But he has good grappling. He's able to get back up. He has like some nice reversals to get back up to his feet. I took a little shot on Ian Heinisch. I went back and kind of watched the Mearshart fight. And I know Mearshart gets finished. You know, if you grapple with him, you can give him his day, or you can have his day on you. But, you know, he's been knocked out a bunch of times. But yeah, just the ferocity, the power that he has with his hands in that spot, I feel like 20-1 that I saw out there is just a little bit too wide for a guy who just got wobbled a little bit against Jordan Williams early in the fight and was definitely eating shots from Jordan Williams. I think The move of camps is huge for Ian Heinisch here. His grappling, I mean, he took on Antonio Carlos Jr. and Cesar Mutante Ferreira, and those guys weren't able to get in on him and find any subs on him. So I don't think that's much of a concern here. Imavov may have the better jiu-jitsu slightly, but the wrestling advantage is on Heinisch's side. If Imavov is able to take him down, I really doubt that he's able to take him down for long. My question is whether I take Ian Heinisch by knockout. I see it at plus 700 on DraftKings Sportsbook, and I already have just a little sprinkle on the Ian Heinisch round 1 knockout. Just watching the Mearshart fight, I'm like, if he lands that, it may be lights out for Imavov. I don't think Imavov. I keep saying Imov. I don't know why. Imavov is I don't see much potential for him moving forward. I think it's a great move for Heinisch because that fight against Gastelum, there were a lot of bad decisions being made. So hopefully at Sanford MMA, probably with better corner people, better strategy, better game planning, I'm expecting him to show the best version of himself that we've seen to date. So I'm with you. I like Heinisch, but I'm not so sure about the overs there. I'm more intrigued by what I think is an overinflated amount of value on the finish props in this fight. All right, moving on. We've got Adrian Yanez taking on Randy Costa, minus 210 Yanez. Plus 175 Costa. I mean, this has actually even moved more on DraftKings Sportsbook. It's minus 225 plus 185 now. People like themselves some Yanez. And I mean, what's not to like? The guy kind of looks like a young Jorge Masvidal. Like, the hands are tight and crisp. His boxing is just, clinical when he's in there. And on the other hand, you got Randy Costa, who's a bit of a finisher. Very, very explosive. Very, very damaging and scary guy, at least in round 1. That's for sure. I agree with the line movement. I just kind of feel like we've missed the boat here. Earlier in the week, Adrian Yanez was like minus 165. This price just keeps inflating. Obviously, Yanez has never been finished due to strikes. The chin seems to hold up when he does get hit. It's kind of like a knockout or bust for Costa here, but the pick is Yanez. I just think he's just on a whole different level from a striking department. What about you?
Yeah, I talked to you before the show about how Yanez was the guy when they opened up the lines last week. It was just like, that looks pretty good, minus 170. I like this. And then to see it balloon up to minus 230, it's like everyone's believing they're on the same page. Everyone's kind of seeing the same thing. But this is punchy kicky. And that's how Randy would win. He's a guy that has a lot of power for this weight class. If he was to clip you, if he was to land something on you, he seems to be able to get that quick knockout. But beyond that, if you want to go a skill set, it's like Adrian Yanez can do it all. And Randy Costa has shown us that he's extremely explosive and dangerous for one round. And explosive and dangerous, not like, oh my God, this guy is one of the most elite level strikers in the division. No, he's bum rushing these guys. He bum rushes them and lands something. He too has now made the move to Sanford MMA from Lausanne MMA in Massachusetts, where he had been previously. And no doubt he's going to be making improvements, but there's just not enough that you can go off. When he came to the UFC, he was 4-0, first finishes, all 4 in the first round. Those fights, Stacey Anderson, 0-4, Kenny Lewis, 0-1, Chris Thorne, 5-9, and Rob Fuller, 0-1. How that got into the UFC with a 4-0 record, couldn't tell you, but they needed somebody short notice. And he came out and he bombed on Brandon Davis for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And then when he gets tired, eventually he gets put away himself fair. The Boston Salmon fight. Boston Salmon went winless in the UFC, fought twice, knocked out very early both times, released from the UFC, fights on the regional scene now. He just bombs on him. The fight with Journey Newson. Journey Newson is 1-2 in the UFC. His one win is actually a no contest because it got overturned due to a marijuana suspension. So it's not the end of the world, but not a whole lot of success. He can bomb on those guys. Yanez is not that guy, man. I mean, he looks slick. I mean, I didn't even think about the Masvidal comparison, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense. He's a green version of him, but he's so slick on the counter punch, keeps a nice high guard, slips out of the way, and he's just got a nice counter attack that he baits you in, stays in that range, causes you to throw, and then capitalize on it immediately. When you look at his 2 pro losses, they're both by split decision, meaning he's never really been beat sound, but a lot of the time it revolves around the wrestling. Domingo Pilarte is able to wrestle him to the ground a little bit. Miles John's able to wrestle him down a little bit. He's making strides in his overall game, and he's doing very well. But this is the key with this kid's success, man. Like, oh shit, he beat Kyle Estrada just by split. Brady Huang on Contender Series. Who's that? Oh, Victor Rodriguez in the UFC. Oh, who's that? Right. But this is the key. This kid's super young. He's fighting for LFA titles. He's fighting good guys. Then when he beats Victor Rodriguez at his UFC debut, motherfucker get a $50,000 bonus for it. And so by his own accord, he's like, as soon as I got that $50,000, I quit my job and was just like, oh, sweet, I can train full time now. I can devote myself to the sport full time now. And so the first fight with him as a full-time fighter is Gustavo Lopez. And dude, he's the one in the matrix in that fight. He just sees everything so clear. Gustavo does land a nice clean shot around minute and a half, 2 minutes into the first round. And he takes it very well. He shows you that he can take a punch. But beyond the first 2 minutes, Gustavo is done. I mean, he is surgical with his approach. He picks him off. And that knockout of the third round, I mean, he just walks in, Gustavo throws, bang, counter, Gustavo hits the ground. Now, Lopez was a guy known for his durability, was also training at Extreme Couture with a lot of good training partners, and, was somebody at the very least went 3 rounds from Rob Dvalishvili, and Yanez absolutely sniped him out of there. But it was the method of which he did it. Third round. After controlling everything, after seeing everything he had, after getting that experience, after feeling comfortable, and then sniping him off. Whereas Randy Costa just bum rushes you and tries to put you away within the first 2 minutes, or he falls off. So the marketing to this fight has been awful. It's Dr. Pepper versus Reese's. No, I don't know. I mean, you know what? Okay, I'll give this.
I don't think it's for us. It's probably for a younger generation.
Okay, that's fair. I was gonna say I shouldn't say it's awful, because I do see people comment and people are like, I'm on this side or I'm on that side. But like to me, that's like, yeah, that's some, I don't know. That's some hokey shit as far as
they're garnering some interest, which is hard when you're this deep down a card. I mean, this is a great fight. It's a great fight between two young and upcoming fighters in this division for sure.
Yeah. If somebody wants to take you know what? Hit me up on Twitter. If you've got Randy Costa, you feel I'm a little bit harsh to him, I will take you this bet on Twitter. If Randy Costa loses, because he's the peanut butter cup guy, and Yanez is the Dr. Pepper guy, right? So if your boy wins, I will eat a warm Reese's peanut butter cup. But if my boy wins, you got to drink a warm Dr. Pepper. Good luck with that.
Wait a second, that doesn't sound fair at all.
The dirtiest.
A warm peanut butter cup sounds delicious.
Paul, obviously it's not a good. That's what I'm saying. Who's not team peanut butter cup? I think that the Zohan's going to get fucked up here and get thrashed.
I like Dr. Pepper.
I'm still on team Reese's. Dr. Pepper also delicious, but you can't drink it all the time. And again, if you drink a warm one, it doesn't go good. So I think Costa's largely outgunned. I think the line movement is spot on. The only thing is they call Randy Costa the Zohan, and everybody knows that you don't mess with the Zohan. So could he land some barbaric head kick in the first 2 minutes?
Possible.
Like, suppose it's true. And Henry Hoof working with him now, even more so. But I like what I see out of Yanez. If Yanez gets knocked out, little Cody's taking a bath, and some of these bets I've already got pre-made, because when I got him at 170, I loaded up. Now, right now, I feel good about it. But if he gets flatlined by the Zoe head, I'm going to feel real bad about it. Anyways, Yanez is one of our guys. I imagine, to me, he feels like a top ticket play. I think you put him on the top ticket. But if I can get some of these less risk type fights, because this is a banger, let's be honest, then great. But actually, Greasy Theory, Randy Costa's only path to victory is bum rushing him now, right? But if you go on Randy Costa's Instagram, literally the entire thing, his Twitter, the entire thing is this peanut butter and Dr. Pepper thing. And they go the Step Brothers, and it's like they'll put Yanez's face, and they just take scenes from Step Brothers and just put Yanez's face and his face and Costa's face. Look at it, dude. It's honestly borderline creepy. I would say this guy actually might be a stalker. I don't know for sure.
Cody, no. It's just,
I don't know for sure, but it's fucking weird. And this is the Greasy Theory. Is that his path to victory is bum rush this guy and just knock him out. But it seems like he likes him. It seems like they're friendly. It seems like they're very cordial. And he might actually come in this fight and pitter patter a little more than he normally does. And that ain't his path to victory. So even more the reason why I think Yanez is going to take the victory here.
My Greasy Theory here is that you're just getting to an age now. You're like, I remember, you're what, 5 years younger, 6 years younger than me?
No, I'm turning 30 in like fucking 2 weeks. And how old are you? You're 34?
No, I'm 36.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
See, I didn't realize you were that much older than J-Rock, my older brother. Paul and J-Rock.
Old man.
I didn't realize that. Why did you get a lot more cynical as you got closer to 30?
Yeah,
Maybe that's my
100%.
problem, dude. I'm almost 30.
You
I'm
get
getting
into your
cynical.
30s, and then you start looking at like the 19-year-olds, the younger generation. You're just like, how do I reach these kids? It's just a part of life. But then eventually, you get up to like 34, 35, 36. It's just like, just let them have their fun. I'm a little bit less disgruntled about it than I would have been. You're just coming into the I don't understand them phase.
I'm just about 30, so I'm just trying to get it.
Yeah, you'll run out of steam and run out of energy to really backlash or feel too passionate about what they're up to.
All right, fair enough.
It's all part of the game. All right, we got Julio Arce taking on Andre Ewell. Julio Arce minus 195 favorite. Ewell can be had for plus 165. Arce coming down. He's been off for quite a long time here. He hasn't fought since 2019. Coming down from 145 pounds. And I think as long as it works out on the scales, I think that's a pretty good move for him because, going back watching the Hakeem Dawodu fight, he's definitely struggling with the size there. He loses a split decision against Hakeem, who is no slouch by any stretch of the imagination. But there's you can definitely, they look a weight class apart. Like Arce his boxing's great. His hands are slick. He's got a nice 1-2. Grappling looks pretty decent all the way around. I like what I see, and I think this is a good move for him. Obviously, like any Andre Ewell fight, Ewell's got like a 75-inch reach. He's going to have a 4.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's a really, really big guy for 135 pounds. But on the feet, in terms of the more impactful strikes, as long as the weight cut's able to play out well for Julio Arce here, I like his chances. I think should be landing the much more. He may eat some jabs to deliver some 1-2s kind of thing. But give me the guy landing the more impactful strikes. What's your take here?
Yeah, I got to agree. I got Julio Arce. I think the move down to 135 pounds, assuming that he's going to be able to make it comfortably, is definitely better for him. He did previously fight at 135, but hasn't fought at 135 since 2016. So, it's been 5 years since he's done it. He's been off for a little over 2 years now. And he had both of his he had both of his elbows surgically repaired. So he has been off. Yeah. So he has been off for like a legitimate reason. I mean, he's had some major surgeries. He's back down to 135. That all gives you a little bit of cause for concern. But as far as the skill set goes, he's got a much more far advanced version of Andre Ewell basically everywhere. I mean, he's got way crisper technique with the boxing. He's a guy that boxed Golden Gloves back in the day. He's a southpaw, nice, clean, sharp punching. The kicking game, I'm definitely going to give it to Julio Arce. The wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, it all goes to Julio Arce. Durability, probably Arce. Cardio, Arce. Arce's got it all, right? It's that Ewell's got that goddamn reach, and that's something that gives everybody problems. And I could actually see it giving Julio problems. The reason I say that is Ewell, the reason why he's a bit of a freak of nature is that he's only 5'8", but he has a 75-inch reach, right? And when you see him stand, it's like his hands are by his knees. He's just got these super long limbs. So if you want to look at an example of Julio Arce fighting a tall opponent, then you go 2 fights back to Julian Erosa, in which Julian Erosa is 6'1", but only has a 74-inch reach. He's actually got 1 inch less than Andre Ewell, despite being 4 inches taller than him. He's 6'1". So he's a much bigger guy. When you see that fight, it's like when the few times that Erosa stands back and allows Arce to come forward, he is able to touch him with the jab. He actually does bust his eye up a little bit with the jab early in the first round as well. But unfortunately, Erosa does not ever use his reach, never uses his length, and doesn't throw straight punches. He throws hooks. So he starts getting too aggressive. He starts marching forward. And he starts trying to pressure him and throw hooks. It's a bad game plan. But when you do see glimpses of him using that jab from the outside, it does appear to be money. And Andre Ewell is a guy that does that in all of his fights. So here's the only concern here is that Ewell tends to be in these really close fights where you've got to base it on damage versus output. He always has the output, but he very rarely has the damage. And judges have a very tough time getting it right. When you look at his last few fights, right? The Chris Gutierrez fight, the leg kick's fine, and he did get dropped with the head kick at the end of the first. The Irwin Rivera fight, he outlanded him 123-81, and yet it's a split decision. Now, why is that? Because Rivera lands the harder shots. It's just that Ewell lands much more of them. But the Jonathan Martinez fight, again, he outstrikes Martinez 80-66. Yet all 14 media members on MMA Decision gave the fight for Jonathan Martinez. Yet the vast majority of fight fans scored rounds 2 and 3 and gave the fight for Jonathan Martinez. And yet the judges sided with Andre Ewell. Well, why would they go with Ewell? Again, it's the output. By the numbers, he did actually outstrike him. So why would you not go by that? But again, Macy Barber, by the numbers, she outstruck Alexa Grasso 40-38 and scored the fight's only takedown. How does the person outstrike them and get the takedown and lose? Because it's a 3-round system. You got to win these individual rounds. And with Ewell, it's like the rounds are always close. He stays to the outside. He jabs. Arce comes forward. Arce tries to kick. Arce tries to get going, but it just might be a little bit dicier than we need it to be. And then the other thing with Arce is that, yes, he's coming off the double, elbow surgery, which in and itself is a bit of a problem. But that fight with Hakeem Dawad, you obviously watched it because you referenced pretty much all the key moments, but Hakeem kicks him in the knee like 30 seconds into the round, and it visibly does something to Arce's knee, in which he shakes it out. He moves very gingerly on it. And then even though he does appear to recover later on in the fight, it's like it could have been a potential knee injury, that on top of the elbows, on top of a long layoff. If we don't get the best version of him, then Ewell's going to keep this close, and then a bad judge could screw you. And that's like literally my only worry, because it's apples and oranges otherwise. I mean, Arce's fighting guys like Hakeem Dawad, Shema Rice, Dan Ige, those are tough guys. Ewell has fought in tough guys, but he's scraping a lower version, Irwin Rivera, a split decision win in a relatively close fight, in a fight where he landed 81 significant strikes on Irwin Rivera, a man now in jail for murder, no longer with the UFC. Like he kind of operates at a fairly low level, and he kind of fights to his opponent's level. So Arce should be able to go there and expose it. And then what brings it home to me, I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm just going to go with Julio Arce, is we're kind of basing that strictly just on the striking game. Arce's got some solid BJJ and some okay wrestling as well. Yep. He mixes in a takedown or two. This fight's his all day long. At minus 190, the layoff and the surgery, okay. But it seems like a generous price. And for that reason, I'm going to hit this one, minus 190, Julio Arce, and hope he brings it on home for me.
Yeah, probably a fight you should check out the weigh-ins before you get too aggressive on it, because
there's a lot of weigh-in fights, on this card.
Yeah, he hasn't been down here in quite a long time. All right, we got Sijara Eubanks taking on Elise Reed. Eubanks minus 380, Reed plus 290. This fight's at 125, and Sijara Eubanks doesn't have the greatest history coming down to 125. Obviously, Elise Reed coming in on short notice, and she's a natural straw weight, so weigh-in shouldn't be an issue for her, but probably giving up quite a bit of size. What can you tell me about this fight?
Yeah, this should be a walk in the park, no problem for Sijara Eubanks. The problem is Sijara Eubanks has actually got a completely different fight the night before, and that's the scale, man. I mean, her making weight is going to be a tremendous issue in and itself. First of all, she's not getting any younger, and we've known that she's had these weight-cutting issues for a long time. When she was on The Ultimate Fighter, she made it all the way to the finals. You're going to get a title fight. You're going to fight for the first ever 125-pound title, and she's not able to do it. Roxanne Modafferi ends up getting the title fight instead. Then she fights Roxanne Modafferi and blows weight, 127. Then you would see, she shaves her head to make weight in one of these fights. Her body shuts down, and she's forced to be taken to the hospital to make weight in one of these fights. And just, it's not going good for her. So she moves up to 135. She's just not a 35er. We talked about Raulian Paiva earlier in the show. His advantage is his size at the weight class, and she's the same way. She's 2-4 at 135 pounds in the UFC. Fought in good fighters, don't get me wrong, but 2-4 is not exactly a great record. At 25, she's so big, she just needs one takedown. You're not getting up. Her jiu-jitsu's top level, BJJ black belt, Lloyd Irvin student, very credited on the ground, very strong, very physical, striking work in motion, work in progress, a little bit herky, a little bit flat-footed, doesn't keep her hands particularly high, but is going to get outstruck by the top level fighters. But against somebody lesser, she can make it work for her. But you got to use that wrestling and use that jiu-jitsu. And against 135 pounders, she just can't get it going. So if she's able to make 125, right? She gets on the scale. She feels good. She's made the weight. That in itself is a huge win, because it's like, okay, she's going to be a factor against a lot of 25ers with that sheer size. Where you mix that in with the fact that Elise Reed is a natural 15er, and it's like, okay, you got a problem right there. You got a big Sijara Eubanks against a small Elise Reed. But then let's talk about Elise Reed. She's not a grappler at all. She can strike. She doesn't have much power. She's more like a Caitlin Chukagian. She's more like Holly Holm actually has power, so I won't use her as an example. But she's somebody that can just land volume from the outside. But that's about it. I mean, just chip away at you. bunch of Kias and then just chip away at you, chip away at you, chip away at you. But as far as the grappling goes, it ain't there. So, I mean, I wasn't overly familiar. I know her because she fought Jasmine Jasudavicius, who's just from Niagara Falls, just down the road, and pretty legit prospect, actually, pretty girl as well. But I'm familiar with it, but I wasn't like overly like, I gotta go back and check out the whole body of work. And it's exactly what I thought. The ninth time when she fought Jasmine, Tapology's got it listed as a 4-round fight. It's not the 3-round fight, but she loses all 3 rounds. It's a 30-27 for Jasmine. She got taken down 6 times. Not only did she get taken down 6 times, she got outstruck and taken down 6 times. I don't know what world exists in which this girl wins the split decision, but they gave her the split decision. Now she gets a title fight versus Jillian DeCourcy. Jillian DeCourcy's like 36 years old at the time. And Jillian DeCourcy takes her down like fucking 4 times. In fact, that is a legitimate 5-rounder. And at the end of the 5th round, the commentating team, everyone's agreeing. They're like, well, the damage was certainly on the side of Reed, but she got taken down and controlled for 3 of these 5 rounds. So she might actually lose this fight, and she ends up getting the decision. I think against Hillary Rose, she doesn't start off particularly good, but eventually she's able to, outwork her and get that stoppage victory. The takedown defense is not there. The grappling off her back is pretty much not there. She's going to be a much smaller fighter. She's coming in on short notice. None of this seems like it's going to go good. But how could she win? Theoretically, let's theorize how she could win. Eubanks has a bad weight cut, and this girl is a better striker. Better striker on the basis of she's going to have the volume and the speed advantage. Mm-hmm. And all she has to do is just circle Eubanks and pot shot at her. When she gets desperate, she tries to move
a little bit more difficult too.
Would be, but it's really going to come down to the weight cut. So yeah. I want to watch come Friday, but yeah, this is what, like minus 385 Eubanks, and I completely agree. Like, styles do make fights, and this is a 100% stylistical matchup that goes in her favor. And if she just does even half of what she's capable of doing, she wins this fight. Not pretty, but she still wins this fight. If she does what she is capable of doing, this is a walk in the park for her. But with Sijara Eubanks, she never makes anything easy on herself. Like, It's generally ugly. But again, just do what you did against Avila, the Julia Avila fight. If you just replicate that, and that was a big 35er you did that to. Mm-hmm. If you can replicate that here, and I know you can, it would be a walk in the park. And I hope she does it easier on herself. I didn't include her. Remember I told you before the show, I was like, I got 3 big plays that were parlayed with some shit from last week, and I'm still rolling on it. Eubanks wasn't one of them, just because as much as she's the biggest favorite on the card, and even though I completely agree with that, she's an apple pie shitter. She's someone that, we don't know how the weight cut's going to affect her. And going back down to 125, we can only assume that even if she does make it, it is still going to affect her, right? So she is the pick, but just a little bit of buyer beware.
That's fair. I'm still in search of a parlay piece for Kyler Phillips here.
In my opinion, I go Kyler Phillips, Adrian Yanez. I mean, that's what I'm all about. And then I put on Julio Arce, right? And then as far as designing, as far as designing PRPs and the plays go, I think I would be inclined to put a Cory Sandhagen on the top ticket. Just saying, if we can get to that main event, it'd be an easy hedge out on TJ. He's the plus money guy. He's actually got some decent plus money against him. So
yeah, I'm not a hedger.
You're not a hedger, eh?
No.
It depends how much you got. I mean, if I'm holding a 10-1 ticket, I'm hedging out. If I'm holding a 6-1 ticket, a 5-1 ticket, even multiple ones, then you know what? I'm just gonna let it ride. But you got to be smart enough where it's like, let's say you can guarantee. Last weekend was a great weekend, right? It's like, okay, everything's gone really good. I can make $10,000. Now, if you put $1,000 against Islam Makhachev, right? It's an easy fade. You put it on Thiago Moises. Then if Islam wins, you still make $9,000, man. But if for whatever reason Thiago Moises happened to win, he would still collect like $7,500 by the time that the line went off. I mean, it was terrible.
My big
stuff
play,
like that. You should, even though I didn't. It'd be smart. I mean, this one's not quite as good, but it's still an easy hedge spot.
I'm not playing that game myself. It's just like last week I had big parlay with Makhachev and D-Rod.
D-Rod. Yeah, you crushed it on that, man. They both made it easy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm generally looking for when I make like a decent sized parlay. It's like 2, maybe 3 legs if I have to, and I want it to be pretty sweat free. I think Kyler Phillips is just on a different level. Eubanks, I mean, the problem is I feel like the longer I wait, if I wait for weigh-ins to happen, it's like this line's gonna get away from me. I mean, it's all part of the game. But I'm gonna have I'll end up having Phillips parlayed with something. I just got to think a little
Yeah,
bit deeper.
I
on
would
this.
for me personally, if you put Yanez and Phillips together, you're getting even money right off the hop.
Yeah.
And then if you added in
That
the
may be
third
the
pick,
play.
which would be the third pick would be Julio Arce, you're getting 2-1, and then you add a Sandhagen because you can hedge out at the end of the night and you're getting a plus 340. Right from there, we're gonna sprinkle in our Aspen lads. We're gonna sprinkle in our definitely Sijara Eubanks on that one.
Well, we still have a fight left here. We don't have to go through the PRP.
No, we're not doing PRP. I'm just saying you don't have to put all 12 of these fights or 11 of these fights on the same ticket. You know, you could definitely just go with, like you're saying, have a 2-fight ticket, a 3-fight ticket, and a 4-fight ticket. Cap it off with that. Like, you don't have to over pressure. But last week, I thought this is a freaking landmine card, and things just fall into place. You never really know what you're going to get. You can assume they're going to fight to their potential, but come Saturday night, it's all up to them, right?
All right. Hannah Goldie takes on Diana Belbita. Minus 120 Goldie, plus 100 Belbita. I mean, this price opened up and it was like minus 200, plus 160. And people jumped all over Belbita and brought it down to close to a pick 'em. I think it was a bad opener, to be perfectly honest. Belbita has had a pretty horrendous run. Molly Meatball McCann, 30-26er on all judges' scorecards. Round 2, McCann looked like the second coming of Khabib Nurmagomedov. Not exactly a great look. She was like all over. She had her in like a triangle, like a mounted triangle at the end of the round. Like, it was a real. She was putting on a wrestling clinic against her. Not the greatest performance of Belbita's career. Then after that, I don't know what she was really thinking, man. Going in, taking Liana Jajua down. When you know that Jajua is like a grappling whiz, that's where she does her best work. Like, I don't really know what the mindset was there as well. I mean, this is a real greasy fight that at these prices, I can understand people who got in on the, on the plus 160s, plus 150s, but like as this gets closer to a pick 'em, it's really hard to have a firm stance. Hannah Goldie on the other side. And on top of that, both of these women are coming down to 115 pounds and fought last time out at 125 pounds. Belbita does have a 7-inch reach advantage over Goldie. Goldie may be quite like a little bit more athletic and maybe a little bit faster kicks. This is like the definition of stay away from me because I don't really trust either one of them. What about you?
Yeah, it's definitely stay away, but I would say it's a 50-50. Sorry, I got to plug in. My bad. I should have plugged this in before I start talking about dying. No, I'm just having my laptop's like, it's going to die. No. I mean, my laptop was like, it's going to die. And then in my mind, I was like,
the whole time.
Sometimes I just had to move to plug it in. Anyways, I should have known I'd probably talk about Diana Belbita versus Hannah Goldie longer than the 3 minutes. Actually, it's not even Hannah Goldie. It's Hannah Goldschmidt. But apparently that's not marketable enough, so she's changed it to Hannah Goldie. But all the same, this is 50-50 fight. If you get plus money on Belbita, you jump on that, and that's what people did. If for whatever reason Belbita was to go to the favorite and you get plus money on Goldie, it seems like that would probably be the move. But both girls, it's just a question of like what version of them is going to show up. And to that effect, you just have no idea. Belbita, if you look at her record, right, she is 11-1 when fighting for RXF in Romania. Mm-hmm. Those wins include 0-1, 0-0, 1-0. I'm surprised she stepped up that big that time, right? 0-4, 0-2. 0-2, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0, 1-2. 11-1 when fighting in Romania for RXF, 2-5 when fighting outside of Romania and RXF, and that's pretty telling. I mean, she comes over to the UFC from KSW, and the Molly McCann fight, I don't know, man. I actually didn't think she looked all that bad. I know what you're saying. It was a 30-25 right across the board. In fact, all three judges scored the second round to be 10-7.
I believe.
No, it was 30-25 right across the board. And all three judges gave that second round 10-7s, right? Because of a point deduction and a 10-8 round, right? So Molly McCann, just like you said, she's dominating her. She's got a topside triangle, big ground and pound. It is a legitimate 10-8 round. And Belbita happens to grab the cage while trying to get up from that like standing arm triangle choke. So it ends up being a 10-7 round. She did win all 3 of them. It's a 30-25. How could you think Balbita had a decent performance in a 30-25? First of all, it's her debut. She's up a weight class. Like, she's not naturally the bigger girl, but she's aggressive and she uses that reach pretty good. Her kickboxing looks pretty decent, man. I mean, she uses the leg kicks very effectively. She's able to catch a lot of these girls on the end of those hook combinations. And I think that she's somebody that is making, developments into her game. It's just, where's the wrestling at? Being from Romania, there's not a great wrestling program. So when you fight at RXF and you beat these very low-level opposition, how do you improve? So she leaves Romania. She's full-time out of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada now with a good team of fighters that have produced, Kyle Nelson and Will Romero, Bellator veteran. Adrian Woolley's her wrestling coach. Like, she's working with the best people in the area. Maybe she's making improvements. It's better than the situation she had back home. But then she fights Liliana Joshua, and you're completely right, dude. Did the striking look good? Yes, damn right it looked good. It did look sharp, and that's one thing you notice from the Molly McCann fight. And she lights up Joshua in the first minute, and Paul Felder, I mean, he's just like, whoa, what is going on? This girl looks good. And then she initiates the clinch. And then she fights right into Joshua's game plan, and then she gets armbarred. Bad ring IQ, for sure. Bad mistake, for sure. But now she's taking a full year off. And being that she's only 25 years old, it's just all going to be good for business. We know that she can strike. Her cardio is a little bit off, but she made her debut against Molly McCann on short notice, fighting, a Cage Warriors champion, McCann. So you give her a pass there. And by the way, keep this in mind, right? The fight with Molly McCann, even though she fought so bad, she outstruck McCann 46-36 in the first round and was outstruck 39-34 in the third. Never slowed down, never quit, fought the whole way through. Admirable, and then got armbarred, sure. But moving down to 115, that'd be good for her. I think her striking is decent for this weight class. I think it's decent for the division. She's got to be able to keep this fight standing. And then the thing with Hannah Goldie, you've been to Hannah Goldie's Instagram?
Yeah.
Oh my God, she's jacked. This girl is shredded.
She's
like
talk
the,
about
the
second coming of
shape,
Alexandra Albu here at 115.
Yeah.
But like that could be
pretty jacked as well. But this girl takes the
very
cake,
muscular.
man.
It could be a tough weight cut. But yeah, 61-inch reach. I understand why people took that, those earlier wider lines and bet it down to a pick 'em, because I think we're right around where it probably should be. Got Belbita, who does have certain advantages, but has shown some questionable ring IQ versus a little bit more of an experienced fighter in Goldie. Not by the number of fights, but it just seems like she fights a little bit more of a smart game plan from what we've seen in the cage.
Yeah, again, it's difficult.
I don't want any part of it.
Yeah, I think Balbita's got the experience because at least she fought for KSW. At least she had, 12 fights for RXF alone, whereas Goldie fought some salty level of opposition. She did beat Jillian Robertson, but, 1-0 Vanessa Grimes, Elisa Blaine that was 2-1, Shayna Gugarty was 2-0. This really does come down to what version shows up. You got two versions of Goldie that could show up. The one that showed up against Callie Robbins on Contender Series, my God. I mean, output galore, never quite stopped. And I believe it is the Contender Series record. 141 significant strikes landed over the 15 minutes. Out of the 3 seasons of Contender Series, it was the highest scoring total of anybody. She's got output for days. And then makes her UFC debut after that high output performance where all she was doing is kicking, counter, kick, counter, kick. Eventually, she started getting kicked. She moves forward, counter. That performance right to the Miranda Granger fight where she just looked so hesitant. Didn't let her hands go. Head way up in the air. Very easy to counter.
And
whenever she get pressed
and
against
landed a couple decent strikes with her hands as well. But I agree with you. For the most part, it was kind of rough to see. And she was significantly outsized in that spot. I think she learned immediately, like, 125 is no bueno for me. My arms are too short.
Yeah, it could be, man. Could be. It's interesting. On the Contender Series, the commentators make mention. They said this is her first fight professionally. This is her first fight where she's not breastfeeding like during fight camp leading up. So it's like, oh shit, she does have a kid. Again, that's something you see on her Instagram. She's a mother, and yet she keeps herself in fantastic shape. But it's the long layoff to me is what's killing me. Because again, she's got other things in her way, but after she loses to Granger, a fight she looked super tentative in and was easily controlled up against the cage. I mean, Granger, that was money in the bank whenever Granger wanted. Just press her up against the cage. She had nowhere to go. Balbita's not as strong or physical as Granger, but she is aggressive. And if she does initiate the clinch like she did in the Joshua, she could have a little more success there. But my issue is that after she loses to Granger, she has a fight book versus Luca Bume at UFC on ESPN 26, in which she pulls out, right? Literally 13 months later, She resurfaces to fight Jessica Penne, pulls out due to COVID. They rebook the fight. She withdraws the second time around. So now she has not fought in just a little under 2 full years. The last time you did see her, she was super hesitant and clearly suffering from octagon jitters. It was her UFC debut. And again, she did not look like the girl that fought Kylie Robbins at all. The karate's there, the kicking there. She does have a quick kick. She just, is an agile fighter. But I don't know. This weight class, she's jacked and she should be stronger than Belbita. But Belbita is probably a little bit better in the clinch and is going to have the striking advantage, the 7-inch reach advantage. One thing that you're noticing in the Miranda Granger fight is Granger's tall, has the reach advantage. And it's like she keeps her at the end of everything. And Goldie doesn't like getting hit in there, man. She doesn't react very well to it. And when she does get hit, it causes her to freeze up. And then she doesn't engage. And when you're freezing up and not engaging, you're losing the round. So if you were able to get a plus 165 ticket on Belbita,
yeah, you did good.
I hear you. But now that it's even money, it's like, no, this is an even money fight. It just depends. It just depends who shows up come Saturday. So if I want to force a dog, I would just be like, we'll take the dog in this one. But I don't even think it's even money right now, isn't it? So
yeah, pretty much.
Why would I force
100? It's close to 50-50 at this point.
Yeah, and I would tell you to watch the weigh-ins, but your only takeaway from the weigh-ins will be, oh shit, Goldie's ripped up. Like she's gonna come in looking in fantastic
she's gonna
shape.
look ripped, but she's still gonna be a lot shorter than Belbita. We got a tall fighter coming in against like a little spark plug, basically. All right, I think we've talked more than enough about that fight. What I've got this week, I've got Darren Elkins. I caught a plus 152. Macy Barber plus 125. Obviously, you like the other side there. I think it's a dogger pass situation from my respects. I'm gonna lay a hammer on Puna. I was waiting to hear. I basically was waiting because it seemed like the money was moving in on Allen as it was anyway. I wanted to talk to you before I lay the wood, but that's gonna be my biggest play on the card. And I'm looking for a parlay piece from for Kyler Phillips. Maybe it's Eubanks, but we'll see how the rest of the week shakes out. I'm taking the little flyers on Ian by KO plus 700 on DraftKings Sportsbook Ian Heinisch by KO plus 700 on DraftKings Sportsbook, and I already have the little small sprinkle on Ian KO1 plus 2,000. So that's where my money is this week. What about you? Hit us with the PRP.
Yeah, so hit you with the PRP. We're going to go with Sandhagen, Ladd, Phillips. Let's say their full names just in case you weren't really paying attention. You're one of these people that just skips to the end. We'll go with Cory Sandhagen. He's the favorite. Aspen, Ladd, Kyler Phillips. Darren Elkins is dog number 1. Miranda Maverick, Jordan Williams. Puna Soriano is dog number 2. That feels crazy saying
I don't know if he's a dog.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at minus 112 Allen, minus 108 Puna Soriano. And you know what that makes him?
DraftKings Sportsbook.
That makes him the underdog.
DraftKings Sportsbook sponsors this podcast there, bud.
Well, what did they listen
minus
at when you said it?
Minus 115, minus 105. Puna.
I take it you didn't DM me the prices this week, Paul. I mean, how am I supposed to remember these things?
You don't have a computer in front of you? Can't go to DraftKings Sportsbook.com?
It is in front of you.
What's that?
No, but what I'm saying is that he's the underdog on FanDuel.
We're splitting hairs about nothing here. We're splitting hairs about nothing.
Yeah, you're right. I'm bringing it up. It is minus 115, minus 105. You're right. Well, some books he's a slight favorite. Some books he's a slight underdog. I would like to say I have 2 underdogs on this card. So that's what I'm sticking with. However, yeah, you're probably right. We're gonna go with Heinisch. We're gonna go with Yanez. We're gonna go with Julio Arce. We're gonna go with Sijara Eubanks, and I'm going to go with Diana Belbita. Oh shit, she's the slight underdog too. So I actually got 3 underdogs. 2 if you go with Paul Shaughnessy's train of logic. Props, yeah, I'm going to have to tackle those at another time. But yeah, I would say Kyler Phillips, Adrian Yanez, that's your 2-piece. You're going to get even money. You throw in Julio Arce. You throw in Cory Sandhagen. That sets you up a hedge. And then your other key ones would be Sijara Eubanks and Aspen, Ladd, and Puna Soriano, right? So all of them together, which seems to be the most comfortable. Actually, you know what? I like Heinisch on that too. And that's plus 2,600. So we're gonna look to hit some decent tickets this weekend. We're gonna look to sprinkle in some props as well, just to kind of try to hedge our asses a little bit if these parlays for whatever reason did go wrong. But yeah, I'm excited about this card, and hopefully the summer's been heating up. You know what I mean? The picks has been getting good, the fights have been getting good, and I just want to keep the barbecue cooking, baby.
Well, let's go. All right, that is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For Cody Saftik, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Ow!